Finding himself among the chosen few, the hero gradually loses his moral compass as he watches impunity turn people into monsters. James and M. Foster are a wealthy married couple enjoying an all-inclusive beach vacation on a remote island in a third-world country. At times, they don't quite understand why they are there or why they traveled so far, but M is willing to support her husband in anything, as long as he finds inspiration to write a new book. Their routine conversations and dull leisure come to an abrupt end when James notices a feral-looking local on the beach, drawing a crowd's attention by riding a quad bike. It's there that James meets Gabby, a true admirer of his work. She hasn't just read his book, she's obsessed with it, and invites him to dinner with her and her husband. That evening, the two married couples meet at a local restaurant, where Albin and Gabby talk about themselves. Gabby works as an actress and demonstrates her talent on the spot. She skillfully pretends to be weak and clumsy in order to advertise products people will want to buy. A little later, James and Gabby decide to dance, and the man realizes that his interest in the young, charming woman is far too strong. He can't take his eyes off her and begins to fantasize about intimacy, despite being married and knowing that Gabby has a husband. Still, this doesn't stop him from agreeing to meet again. After all, Gabby is the first and only fan of his writing. The next morning, the two couples decide to leave the gated resort and go on a picnic. According to the rules, this is strictly forbidden, since they are on an island belonging to a poor third-world country, but money easily solves the problem. Not only do they leave the guarded, fenced area without any trouble, they also rent a car to travel around the island. Along the way, they see impoverished locals and notice their hostile stares, but they pay no attention to it. They have money, and that gives them a complete sense of freedom. While relaxing by the sea, Albin asks why M chose James as her husband, given that he is an unsuccessful writer who has published only one book. M admits that she fell in love with him precisely because her father despised James and wanted a more suitable husband for her. M's father is a famous and wealthy owner of his own publishing house and never wanted her to get involved with a writer. This flatters James, yet his attention is increasingly drawn to the distant and captivating Gabby. When James steps into the bushes to relieve himself, Gabby follows him. Without saying a word, she helps him find pleasure and silently invites him to betray his wife. Late that night, the couples decide to return to the resort, but Albin and the others are too drunk to drive. James takes it upon himself to get them back, but along the way the car's headlights begin to malfunction. As he tries to fix the problem so he can see the road, James loses focus and takes his eyes off the way ahead. Just a few seconds are enough for a farmer to appear in front of the car, and James hits him. Waking up after the crash, M, Gabby, and Albin can't believe what has happened. They panic, shout, and argue, trying to decide what to do next. M and James want to call an ambulance or go to the police, but Albin and Gabby insist on leaving the poor man to his fate. Prisons here are brutally cruel. For any crime, a woman can be turned into a sexual slave, and a man can be executed. Unwilling to risk the same fate, the four flee the scene. When they return to the resort, they pretend they got lost and accidentally left the perimeter, begging to be let back inside. The next morning, James is awakened by persistent knocking at the door. When he opens it, he sees several police officers who have arrived at the hotel to arrest him for the crime. James and M are taken into custody and driven to the nearest police station, where they are separated into different rooms for questioning. James is terrified and panicked by what's happening, so he complies with every demand. He hands over his clothes while waiting to be questioned and soon meets Detective Thresh. He is the nephew of the man who rented them the car. Thresh first asks James to testify that they stole the vehicle, though he warns him that cooperation will not lessen his guilt. James killed an innocent farmer, and under local law, the victim's son must take revenge. If the deceased has no children, the responsibility for the execution falls to the state. Fortunately, or perhaps not, the farmer has a 13-year-old son, and it is he who must punish James for his sins. The writer is shocked by the local laws, but the detective explains that there is a special government program created specifically for foreigners. With enough money, James can buy back his life and pay for the creation of a double, ensuring that justice is served while he remains alive and is able to return to the resort. Struggling to believe that what is happening is real, James signs the agreement and withdraws money from an ATM to pay for his own freedom. A few hours later, doctors escort him to a special laboratory where people are cloned for subsequent execution. James is placed in a small chamber that fills with liquid, after which he experiences a severe headache and hallucinations, necessary steps to copy his memory, consciousness, and personal recollections. Soon, James wakes up in a hospital room next to M. He learns that the clone has been successfully created and is even granted the right to see it. The sight of himself from the outside terrifies the writer, but this is not the last surprise from the detective. Under local law, he is required to attend his own execution and may watch it from the sidelines, as if sitting in a movie theater. Heading to a service area, James and M witness the clone being chained to a wooden beam as a farmer's son is brought in. With a knife in his hands, the boy punishes his father's killer, stabbing him repeatedly in the stomach. convinced that justice has been done. Watching the scene, M is horrified, while James feels pleasure in the total absence of consequences, barely hiding a smile. After the execution, he is given the clone's ashes, presented to him as a souvenir. Upon returning to the hotel, M urgently books tickets on the next available flight and urges her husband to leave the country as soon as possible. James agrees with his wife but informs her that his passport has disappeared. They search the room but cannot find the documents, forcing them to remain there for several more days. A short while later, James goes to the lobby and asks the administrator to extend the room rental for another week. There he encounters Gabby, who begs him for a private conversation. She promises to explain why she and Albin testified against James. It is revealed that Albin is a successful architect and the designer of most of the resorts on the island. Some time ago, he built a new hotel with an endless pool. The pool was transparent so that voyeurs could watch people in their escapades below, but the structure collapsed, killing several people. Albin and Gabby were sentenced to death, where they learned about the peculiarities of the local legal system. By paying for the execution of their clones, they discovered the appeal of life on the island, yet they still harbor deep hatred for the local official who received a state award for the hotel designed by Albin. After this, Gabby invites James to meet the other resurrected. Charles, Jennifer, Bex, and Dr. Modon are a group of wealthy individuals who also paid for their own executions. They can afford anything they want, knowing that local law will always allow them to buy their way out. The only question troubling Dr. Modon is what would happen if a mistake were made and the wrong person were executed. This thought terrifies James, since he was unconscious during the procedure, and it is possible that he himself is the copy, while the real writer was killed by the farmer's son. Most of the group is unconcerned with this possibility. Pleasure is all that matters, and here they can indulge in it without limits. Abusing alcohol and playing with firearms, the wealthy group decides to visit the local official and reclaim the state award that rightfully belongs to Albin. James is given a choice: join them or take a bullet to the stomach and say goodbye to his life. Threats no longer frighten him the way they once did, because doing things without any punishment has become far more enticing. Agreeing to yet another crime, James joins the others as they break into a souvenir shop, stealing several grotesque masks to conceal their faces. Losing their humanity not only outwardly but inwardly as well, the group of wealthy elites heads toward a remote mansion perched atop the cliffs. While searching for an entrance, James encounters a servant and attacks her to keep her from screaming. The others burst into the house and begin searching it. They find the official and his young mistress in bed, interrupting their private leisure. As James holds the 3 hostages at gunpoint, the others locate the medal and return it to Albin, convinced they are entitled to take whatever they desire. Reminding him of their total impunity, Gabby urges James not to be afraid and to pull the trigger, executing one of the hostages. Despite his passion for the architect's wife, the writer cannot bring himself to commit murder and refuses to do so. Albin notices their private conversation and intervenes, not out of jealousy, but curiosity. He allows Gabby to flirt with another woman's husband and wants his wife to kill one of the hostages. At the moment when the woman is about to fire her first shot, a guard who had been hiding appears in the room. He opens fire and shoots Albin in the leg, plunging the scene into chaos and panic. Trying to save her husband, Gabby fires wildly, killing the guard and 3 of the hostages. Soon, the group of wealthy elites returns to the resort and hides out in James's room. M is frightened and shocked by what has happened, but her husband urges her not to panic and not to tell anyone that Albin is wounded and bleeding out. In the morning, a group of 7 wealthy individuals is arrested by the police and prepared for execution. Knowing that this is merely a formality, they once again pay for their freedom and wait for the clones to be ready. Considering themselves far too important, they complain about the local conditions, criticizing the waiting room for lacking a water cooler, soft couches, and a television. Soon, the detective appears and delivers shocking news. The elites have gone too far, and the local government has decided to revise the laws. Their limit of impunity has been exhausted, and a decision has been made to execute the real wealthy offenders with no chance of cloning. The 7 attempt to resist, but they are all taken to a service area where everything is prepared for the execution. At one point, James manages to snatch a knife and attack the guards, but he loses the fight and becomes the first to be executed. After that, the police execute Gabby, Albin, and the remaining elites. It seems like the end of the story, but everything taking place is part of a performance. The real wealthy individuals are sitting nearby, watching it all like a high-octane movie, deriving even greater pleasure from reckless violence and hedonistic tourism. A little later, James returns to the hotel room with another urn containing the ashes of his clone. M is terrified and begs her husband to leave the island as soon as possible, but he reminds her that his passport has disappeared. She no longer wants to wait, frightened not only by everything that has happened, but also by how profoundly her husband has changed. Looking into James's eyes, she sees an emotionless man drowned in depravity and total permissiveness. Tired of enduring his behavior, she leaves immediately. The couple argues and ultimately separates. James struggles deeply with what has happened and decides to isolate himself on the beach. There, he is found by Gabby, who seduces him and sees only positives in his fight with his wife. After kissing James, Gabby invites him to her place to relax. She uses a forbidden plant with aphrodisiac properties that also induces hallucinations. After inhaling some of the smoke, the pair kisses and enters an altered state in which they can no longer fully control their actions or emotions. Making love with Gabby, James is barely aware of himself, observing from the outside as the other elites begin to join them. The hallucinations become so intense that it is impossible to tell whether everything happening is just a dream or if they are participating in a mass indulgence where everyone desires everyone else. The next morning, James practically turns into a pig, shedding all moral standards and inhibitions. During breakfast, he spits at other guests and throws food at them, knowing he is allowed to do absolutely anything. At some point, his new friends propose an even more insane step, committing a crime they won't have to pay for. The locals profit from creating clones and executing them, but the elite suggest kidnapping and killing the detective so he can no longer profit from their minor escapades. James eagerly agrees, believing it will be fun. That evening, the group arrives at the clinic where Thresh is undergoing treatment. While James stays outside to secure the perimeter, the others sneak inside to abduct the detective. At one point, security nearly runs James over with a service vehicle, but the others explain it as the guards' betrayal of the detective. They fled, allowing the elites to kidnap Thresh for a beating and possible execution. After bringing the officer to the hotel, the others encourage James to have some fun. Losing touch with reality and unafraid of consequences, James beats the detective and urinates on him, asserting his dominance. At one moment, Gabby removes the bag from the officer's head, revealing that it is not Thresh, but yet another clone of James. It scared James so much that he ran off and locked himself in his room. Even alcohol and illegal substances couldn't distract him from the sheer horror of everything happening around him. Gabby tried to calm James down, even suggesting using the clone to participate in an unusual sexual experiment with 3 people, but he ignored her. All this time, James had been hiding his passport under the sink and had deliberately stayed on the island, but now, he just wanted to leave as soon as possible. The next morning, hiding his face behind sunglasses and a hat, James got on a bus heading for the airport. Along the way, a group of wealthy men stopped the bus and shot at the window where James was sitting. They demanded the return of their companion, threatening to kill everyone if he didn't comply, forcing James to step off the bus. It seemed like things couldn't get worse, but it was only the beginning of the nightmare and the revelation of the truth. Gabby and the others confessed that everything that had happened was a game, with James as their main plaything. They hadn't been his friends, they had used him to warp his mind, and then intended to kill him, turning him into a victim of his own indulgence. They didn't know him and had never even read his book, because James wasn't a real writer, just a complete failure. To prove it, Gabby read aloud an expert's critique, explaining the book's popularity solely by the fact that James's father-in-law was a successful publishing owner who financed his son-in-law's debut. At the moment Gabby dropped a bottle of wine on the hood of a car, James lunged at her, trying to grab the gun. Failing, he fled, disappearing among the trees. Gabby shot after him, wounding him in the leg. He didn't stop and by evening reached a local farmer's property, where he eventually lost consciousness. Fortunately, the farmers hid him in a barn and treated his wound. When James regained consciousness, he saw the farmer's son standing over him. The boy attacked, trying to strangle him, only for James to realize that it was yet another surreal horror unfolding in his mind. Regaining a sense of reality, James decided to go outside, only to discover that the wealthy men had found him and surrounded the farm, killing everyone who lived there. They had been playing all along, but James had shown resilience and courage in the final stage. The wealthy men were willing not to kill him and even offered him a place among them, but only if he completed one last test. In it, he had to face a dog, but not an actual animal. It was his own clone. The copy of James walked on all fours, on a leash like a real beast, obediently following their commands. James could take a knife and kill the clone, but he refused, feeling it would be too immoral. The clone, obedient as an animal, followed Gabby's command and lunged at James, biting his hands and neck. Faced with a fight where only one could survive, James battled and defeated the clone. For a moment, he gave in again to a sense of impunity, brutally smashing the clone's face. Gabby, congratulating the winner on passing the final stage, fed him from her bloodied breast, soothing him like a baby. Some time later, the resort season ended, and the rainy season approached. Having lived in the hotel all this time, James bought a ticket home and called his wife, warning her he would return soon. Packing 3 jars of his clone's ashes into his suitcase, James boarded a bus to the airport. He saw Gabby, Albin, and the others returning to ordinary lives, with their own problems, goals, and dreams. Unlike them, James no longer felt the need to hide behind the facade of normalcy. This island was a place of total indulgence and impunity, and he liked it. He had rotted from the inside as a person, and there was no place for him in the normal world. Accepting this, James returned to the hotel and enjoyed the rain, thinking about what crime he would commit next. Can wealth be seen as a form of power that allows people to bend moral rules to their will? And doesn't this risk turning a supposedly civilized society into a hidden form of barbarism? Share your thoughts in the comments down below, give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next one.